columnist for the LA Times, LZ Granderson, executive editor at Deadline, Dominic Patton, Emmy award-winning comedian and host of Permission to Speak, Paul Mecurio, and former senior communications aide to Senator Lindsey Graham, T.W. Origi. Glad to have all of you here. All right, Dominic, look, we heard a little bit about what he said, the tone, the emotion, even speaking about the widow of Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk. What more are you hearing about how he approached this show tonight?
Well, I'll tell you one thing we're hearing, Laura, is he approached all of it as the people that you guys talk to very emotionally, very straightforwardly, and with that blend of humor and insight that Jimmy's been famous for decades, literally. You know, we are like you, we're all waiting to see the actual show. And of course, you know, a show can be edited. So, you know, we have to be a little circumspect about what is actually said or not. But the people that we talked to, our reporter Anthony D'Alessandro was down there too. And you can see the people he interviewed on the Deadline Twitter or X feed. And they talked about some of these topics too. They also talked about him talking about the Sinclair and other stations and the Next Star stations that have decided to continue to postpone Jimmy, and that they talked about how he joked about, well, you know, that's that, but you know, you can always watch it online. And I think there was some jokes about members of his own family and what have you. So there was, I believe, one of the guests you guys spoke to, one of the audience members referred to no bending of the knee. There was no bending of the knee and kissing of the ring, but there certainly was a person who was proud to take his own stage. And we heard as well that he walked out to a standing ovation, not just from the audience, but from his crew as well. And that's been a long part of this, is the negotiations went on with Disney about the show coming back. We heard that Jimmy Kimmel was very concerned about the people who work for him. You know, a lot of people in Hollywood have been through some very rough times with the strike, with the pandemic. And so making sure that people still have jobs, making sure that people still have a paycheck they can rely on, that was important too.
And of course, we know, LZ, I want to bring you in here. What do you think about this statement from the President of the United States, who, by the way, we hadn't heard from since it had been announced that Kimmel was going to be coming back on the air. And then moments ago, really before his show is set to take air in some households across the country, he talks about the same things he had said before about what he perceives as a lack of talent. He mentions the idea of ratings. He talks about an arm of the DNC. He threatens a potential, it seems, discussion about a lawsuit with ABC. What's your take on that?
Oh, well, it's good to see you again, Laura. First, I need some full disclosure. I worked at ESPN, a subsidiary of Disney, for about 18 years, and I currently am employed at ABC News. So I need to make sure I'm full disclosure, because I need to walk this very carefully because of that. That being
it's quite
said,
a minefield, I can appreciate, but I still want to hear your views nonetheless.
Yes. So with all that being said, the president's words are very disturbing. They're very disturbing, but they're also serve as a reminder. They're disturbing, one, because we're not used to seeing, obviously, the leader of the free world talk about freedom of speech in this capacity. But it's also a reminder to all the other industry leaders in the country. If you think about it, he's right. ABC News did capitulate and give him that money. And you've noticed other institutions have capitulated and gave him what he wanted. And then a short time later, you found out that it didn't satisfy him. Even the queer people in West Hollywood who flew their flags, the queer flag, the rainbow flag at half-mast, found themselves in the target of criticism within days later. So it doesn't pay to capitulate to someone like that. What it does pay is to stand up for what is right and what is democracy and what America's always stood for. That seems to stand the test of time. But trying to appease Donald Trump at best seems to be temporary.
Well, first of all, you mean the flying at half-mast as a result of Charlie Kirk's assassination? Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes, but it was also in sort of like in recognition of the tone that was coming from the White House.
Got it.
And so, when I think about all these things added together, all the different types of ways in which institutions, communities, businesses have tried to appease this man, short time later, it seems as if he still comes after them. So when are we going to get the lesson that you don't try to appease him, that you actually stand up for democracy and what is right?
Well, Paul, let me bring you in here, because interestingly enough, to LZ's point, there's capitulation, and then it seems as though he is saying, the president in a statement, The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. Something happened between then and now and going on for that. So it seems as though they said something, he is suggesting they said something to him and then decided against that. And yet you do have Nexstar, you have Sinclair that are continuing to preempt his show, which means about a quarter of ABC's reach in homes across this country, they're actually not even going to see him tonight on television. Politics, sadly, is keeping score.
Yeah.
Paul, is this a lose-lose?
It is. I think ABC is in between two angry groups, supporters of Kimmel and those who don't like him. And this tweet confirms, so he threatened and was successful, Trump was, using the FCC to drop the hammer. Now he's threatening a bigger hammer, okay? So this helps dispel the conversation a few days ago. Remember people saying, oh, this was just a business decision. This was a business decision like the band leader in The Godfather made a business decision to let Johnny Fontaine out of his contract, okay? This is nothing but muscle. And the problem is that ABC got itself in a predicament because they went with the loudest voice in the room. This is what we do now. Whoever makes the biggest stink wins, and that's what happened. And no one was talking about the 2 million viewers who were fans of Jimmy Kimmel. So why is it okay for one group of citizens to make a decision about what another group of citizens watch? And herein lies the problem. And Trump is now doubling down with threats like this. And so here we are, sort of, and I wouldn't want to be ABC. I mean, everybody's mad at them. I mean, they're the relative that's assigned dessert for Thanksgiving, and they show up with Jell-O mold and fruitcake, and everybody's mad at them, right? Like I mean, I joke to make a point, but this is a civics lesson for all kids out there, which is do the right thing, don't do the thing that the mob wants you to do.
Suddenly I'm reminded of National Lampoon and they're scraping the mold off of the top of the Jell-O mold. I don't know why that scene got in my mind. See that, people, let me bring you in here because there's this conversation happening about obviously Sinclair and Nexstar saying, no, we're not going to air it still and going to do that. But I do want to note that notably one Sinclair station that's in a blue market is allowed, I'm putting that in air quotes, to air Kimmel tonight. What do you say to Paul's point about the idea of decisions being made about who can and cannot see? It looks like politics is part of it. That electoral map overlay may be a big part of this conversation.
I also think business is a big part of it.
Which is big.
Sinclair, well, their job is shareholder value and to return profits to those invested in the company and those dealing with the company. Sinclair has asked for a donation to Charlie Kirk's foundation to lay down their arms. Nexstar is dealing with they want a ruling overturned at the FCC that would give them access to 80% of households in the United States, something that's unheard of. That's huge at play. ABC is a bit player in this because they use Nexstar. But I want to make a bigger point here. Johnny Carson in 1979, when he was averaging 15 million viewers a night, and upwards of 85% of American households were tuned in, was asked by Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes, why doesn't he deal with heavier issues? Why doesn't he deal with politics? And he said, for two reasons. Because one, it will make me feel more important than I am, and comedians feel more important than I am. And two, it could sway people. Jimmy Kimmel, while I like a lot of what he's done, don't like some of what he's done, I can tell you, he has burned so many bridges among a huge swath of the American public, 50% upwards. By repeating a lie that many people took very offensively, ABC is asking themselves, is the $15 to $17 million we spend on him worth the squeeze when since January we've lost 42% of our audience? That comes down to dollars and cents. And you didn't hear Donald Trump say, I'm coming after your FCC license. He said, let Jimmy Kimmel rot in his bad ratings. And trolled, I might sue him. The fact of the matter is, these are business decisions being made at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's interesting, of course, and the world has changed a lot since Johnny Carson was on air, but I get your point. I mean, maybe there's an Ed McMahon somewhere out there getting ready to do something.
He was a far bigger deal than Jimmy Kimmel.
No, I'm not going to get in the way of begrudging Johnny Carson, but the world has changed since he was on air. But to this very point, the FCC chairman, LZ, Brendan Carr, he insists the boycott is just local TV stations standing up to big media companies. He said, we need to keep empowering local TV stations to serve their communities of license. And I wonder from your perspective, given the fact that many people criticized ABC because they did not challenge it. They did not wait to see whether or not the FCC was going to make good on a perceived threat. They could have said, okay, well, I'll take the hard way, which means you're going to have to take my license and I'll fight you in court. Instead, they made a decision. Many believed it was premature and also bad, hence the boycott and beyond. But given their decision right now to go and say, I'm putting him back on the air after thoughtful conversations, knowing, as TW is talking about, the calculus here of what they're weighing, what does that tell you about the state of their bargaining power as a media huge enterprise?
They're making a business decision, as your previous guest said. You know, he took the business decision conversation to make it sound positive for President Trump, and I can see why that would happen. But the reason why that Kimmel's back on air is because of what happened to Disney stock prices. It's because of what happened to subscriptions to Disney Plus. Those are all business decisions as well. So, you know, you can say business decision with Nexstar, and you can say business decision with Sinclair, but you also can say business decisions with the American people. And that's the reason why Kimmel is back on air. Yeah. Now, in terms of your question, you know, I think Laura, I really think the biggest issue out of this, while freedom of speech is at the center, it's how freedom of speech is being curtailed that is really worrisome and troublesome to me, because of this consolidation of media. When you can have individuals, private citizens, 4 or 5 control the internet, control our newspapers, control our television stations, that's close to the monopoly that was supposed to not be in existence right now. So when I think about the Jimmy Kimmel conversation, yes, it is a freedom of speech conversation, but for the American people, we need to be thinking larger. Because just like with AT&T and with Ticketmaster having monopolies that put us in situations we didn't want to be in, if we allow these media companies to continue to gobble up our local media as well as our national media to tell us exactly what we can and cannot say, we're going to be in the exact same situation, but when it comes to free speech and hence our democracy.
Dominic, you know, I do think that Jimmy Kimmel is a kind of an avatar for a larger discussion on free speech and what it's like to have content regulated for the American public. When you look at what many people are wondering, will he be muzzled? Will he apologize? What do you expect him to do tonight when he gets on that stage essentially and addresses this head on? Do you think that if he apologizes, that will speak volumes in the wrong direction for free speech?
I do.
Well, I will say this. First of all,
well, here, let me ask
I
Dominic, and
do
I'll
have
ask
to
who's talking first. Hold on, let me see who's moving their mouth. Was that Paul or Dominic? I'll go to Dominic. He smiled first. Dominic, you got the smile. Go for it.
All right. Snapping up. I will say one thing. Johnny Carson did talk politics. Go back and look at Johnny Carson during Watergate. He talked it all the time because that's what people were talking about. And that, in many ways, is the true role of comics and satirists in our society. And that's what Jimmy Kimmel's been doing for a long time. Will he apologize tonight? I don't think so, because just from listening to the audience members we spoke to, the audience members you guys spoke to, he talked to Erica Kirk. He talked to a woman who has dealt with a tragedy many of us cannot imagine. And a woman who on Sunday showed a grace with forgiveness that almost none of us could express. He spoke to her directly. And that, I think, speaks volumes about him. As for what this can say about free speech, what this can say about Donald Trump, look, that true social rage-a-thon that we all expected on Air Force One back from the UN, and it happened. You know, the part that really struck me is the threatening ABC again. Yeah, what is he threatening them with?
What is he
interesting about this is
wait, Dominic, hold on. I want to, Dominic, hold on. I want to hear Paul because I wanted to give him a chance to speak as well. Go ahead, Paul.
Can I just piggyback on that?
Yes.
If it's an apology, it's a mistake, because I'm going to go back to civic lessons for our children. If he explains, he's compassionate, he speaks to Charlie Kirk's wife, great, appropriate. If you apologize for something that is not wrong, but just people don't like, what message are you sending our children? That's not how this works. And that's why it's not a hard stance. I'm not saying it because I'm a comedian, I have a bias left or right. This is a critical civic lesson for kids, which is you should be able to say something that people don't like and not be told you did something wrong.
Well, we'll see what he does tonight. Well, the accusation. I hear what you're saying, TW. We'll see what he actually says. It seems we're all on bated breath. Thank you so much, everyone.